So you're saying that like if a woman has consents to sex, it's not actually consent? Is that what you're arguing? I'm just confused.
I guess in a way that is kind of what I was getting at.
Men, listen. For your own protection, you have to vet women. When I say you have to vet women, I mean your freedom literally depends on it. You have to find out what ideologies the woman that you are interested in is influenced by or believes in, and whether she's conscious of it, aware, or not conscious of it. That's right, it's true that you can believe in something and not necessarily be conscious of it. For example, have you ever asked a woman if she's a feminist and she said no, but every word out of her mouth comes from the Feminism Manifesto? Has that ever happened to you?
Okay, well, are you a feminist?
I mean, I've never considered myself one, but I probably would if you sat me down and tried to define it.
Okay, so feminism is a rejection of patriarchy. That's what it is at its core, right?
Sure, but I'm getting married and going to and having children. So
yeah, I know, but do you reject patriarchy? Still be true.
You can be feminist and still value a family unit, loyalty, monogamy, and raising children. And
yeah, you can be a feminist and value all it. Okay. Feminism is a rejection of patriarchal system. They reject patriarchals. Like for you and your husband, let's give an example. Do you want you and your husband to be equals?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's feminism.
See what I mean? According to her, she's not a feminist. But she said if you sat her down and asked her some questions, some of her views would probably line up with feminism. According to her, she's not a feminist because she wants a family. But she believes she is equal to her husband. According to her, she's not a feminist, and yet she's a leftist progressive. Please make sense of that.
I do get kind of a vibe based on what you said earlier in the conversation that you might be a little bit more on the leftist progressive side. Would that be kind of accurate to say?
Yeah.
There is no way you can be a leftist progressive and not be a feminist. It's literally impossible. Why do I say that your freedom could depend on how well you vet a woman? Because to a woman who is under the influence of feminism, whether she is conscious of it or not conscious of it, consent could mean not consent.
So you're saying if a woman finds herself alone, assuming she's attracted to the man and has agreed to be in the room alone with him, right? How did they get there?
It doesn't have to be in that situation. I mean,
so they're just, what's the scenario that you're envisioning then?
Okay, fine, we'll go with yours.
Well, I'm just like I don't know, I'm just a little confused here. So you're saying that like if a woman has consents to sex, it's not actually consent? Is that what you're arguing? I'm just confused.
I guess in a way that is kind of what I was getting at.
Yes, you heard it right. This means that even though she consents and you are under the understanding that she consented, she can turn around and use feminist ideology that she's been influenced by, that she might or might not be conscious of, that says because men are stronger than women and women tend to be more passive, it creates an unfair power dynamic when a woman is alone with a man, which means even though she consented, she didn't really consent due to the imbalance in the so-called power dynamic.
But sure. You did write it down, so I'll touch on it briefly, but we'll only give it 5-10 minutes. And so you said so this is what you said. So I think a lot of men might find themselves in situations where they're alone with a woman who maybe is drunk, maybe not, whatever, and they aren't aware of the ways that she's been conditioned to be more passive, but also this biological prerogative for self-defense where there's a natural inherent dynamic between men and women. You said it's women, I think, from a physiological perspective, you can't deny that a man is stronger, and you're going to sense that if you're alone in a room with a man, you're going to be more agreeable, and then also probably more likely conditioned societally to be more agreeable, to find yourself to not press your boundaries as much as you should, because you assume that men are going to react violently if you do. You assume that from a biological perspective, but also you assume.
Where is she getting these assumptions from? Could it be from feminism? Because being stronger than a woman doesn't mean I'm going to be violent towards a woman. But to feminism, that's what it means.
That because you're conditioned to believe that, and then men are probably not even thinking about that. I'm just a little confused. Are you saying that women who end up alone in a room with a man are, in all instances, are SA'd? I'm confused.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, you're saying, like, just by virtue of being in that situation, that what? You wrote it. These are your words,
I
not
think
mine.
what I'm trying to convey is that when you are when you're alone in a room with somebody, and there's a like inherent power dynamic.
What's the what would the power dynamic be?
That he's a man and you're a woman.
So just simply by virtue of being a man, okay, that's the power dynamic.
Don't you think
Okay.
that there's like
No, go ahead. Just finish your
evolutionary
point. Go ahead.
to that?
No, finish your argument. Go ahead.
I was saying that if you are a woman alone in a room with a man, there's an inherent power dynamic, and that I think there would be some sort of evolutionary adaptation where you would maybe be more submissive.
So you're saying if a
Acting
woman finds
self-preservation.
herself alone, assuming she's attracted to the man and has agreed to be in the room alone with him, right? How did they get there?
It doesn't have to be in that situation. I mean,
So they're
attracted
just,
to him.
what's the scenario that you're envisioning then?
okay, fine, we'll go with yours.
Well, I'm just like I don't know, I'm just a little confused here. So you're saying that like if a woman has consents to sex, it's not actually consent? Is that what you're arguing? I'm
Listen,
just confused.
I guess in a way that is kind of what I was getting at.
Did you hear that? Because of feminism, getting consent from a woman doesn't necessarily mean that she consented. Why? Because it all depends on how she felt about the power dynamic during the time she was alone in the room with a man. And this is the same woman that says she's not a feminist. This is why you have to vet women.
Do you consider yourself a feminist?
No.
Starting with you.
I would say humanist.
Humanist, okay.
According to her, she's a humanist and wants to be married and have a family. Look, this is not to say that her initial claim wasn't valid, because it was. This is to say that because she's been indoctrinated by feminism and other secular ideologies, the likelihood of the feminist ideology corrupting her arguments to support her claim is very high. What was her initial claim? She said that men are encouraged to be sexually deviant.
Well, let me just go back to, I guess, your original notes here. So, I mean, you said that you think men are kind of on the opposite side, where men are encouraged to be more sexually deviant or just abusive towards women, and you think it creates a weird dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with her. She's telling the truth. Look at our society. Look at what society tempts and encourages men to do. Look at what we are bombarded with on TV, the internet, and social media. Look at the message that the invention of the pill, abortion, and sexual revolution sent to men and women.
Yeah, and who pushed birth control?
Probably feminist.
From what era?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know
well,
anything about the history of
that would be the sexual revolution. So the thing that you're upset about, which is the promiscuity issue, that was brought to you by women. Brought to you by women, and the sexual revolution of, hey, all this chastity stuff, well, that's all bad. Women should be able to bang as many dudes as they want. This is a good thing. And that now they can because of birth control, right? That was part of the freeing mechanism.
The evidence is undeniable. Young men are being taught to be sexually deviant from a very young age. This is why men fund the entire sex industry, pay for OnlyFans, and simp for women online. Even though her claim from a moral perspective is right, look at the argument she has provided and the conclusion she has arrived at as a result of looking at the claim from a feminist lens. According to her, because society teaches men and women, by the way, to be sexually deviants, she somehow came to the conclusion that even though a woman consents to have sex, that it doesn't necessarily means that she consented because of the physical power imbalance between both genders. Why does the blame lean solely on the men's side and zero on the women's side? The implications here is that masculinity is toxic, abusive, perverted, manipulative, and coercive, which is a disgusting lie and 100% absolutely far from the truth. And guess what other ideology apart from feminism helped her come to this conclusion? Drum roll, please. Evolution. I call it evolution.
So I'm guessing that you believe in some kind of evolutionary model.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, if that's the case, then wouldn't status, which is related to reproduction, be a thing which would be very evolutionarily advantageous?
Yeah.
Well, then why wouldn't society conduct itself around that?
I think status is a normal thing to desire, but I do think that it is kind of exploited in our society.
What do you mean?
Where I think there's a lot of indicators when you're growing up that tell you as a man that if you don't have a woman in your life, or if you aren't able to sleep with a bunch of women, that you're not a high value man.
Yeah, but from an evolutionary standpoint, reproduction is the primary edict, right?
Yeah.
So then the man who reproduces the most would have the most status. That kind of makes the most sense, doesn't it?
Sure.
So, I mean, so then it seems that if reproduction is the primary edict, and having sex with lots of women, we could assume leads to lots of reproduction. Why wouldn't I still don't understand why society wouldn't kind of foment itself around that? Right?
I think that it makes sense that it would form itself around that, but I think it's also overemphasized.
Like I said, her initial claim was credible. It was factual. But because of her feminist and evolution indoctrination, it led her to produce a conclusion that is nothing more than hatred for men.
I think that a lot of men have their self-worth tied to sex and women and the quality and quantity that they can obtain. And I think that causes people to behave in irrational ways.
This is why I say, men, for your own protection, for your own freedom, please vet these women morally. And women, likewise as well. All right? Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the reaction. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time, all right? Peace.